Before Cyndi, I apologize. Before you bless us with your knowledge, Peter Jameson is here to share about a deal that he has done.
Okay.
So
great.
Before Cyndi takes it away, Peter, are you ready to share a little bit about a deal that you've done? You are on mute. You're on mute still. Bottom left corner, there's a microphone. There you go.
The original invite came through Google Meetings, and so I've been bumbling around in Google Meetings for a minute. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, I made it. I'm here. So yeah, recent transaction. Obviously, extremely unusual times in Portland, Oregon for multifamily sales. Battling, social crisis as well as values, lender trust issues. Quite a few elements at stake, including from the very beginning where, due to COVID restrictions, I was brought the opportunity through a commercial lender or a commercial broker that deals mainly in larger multifamily. Sorry about that. To potentially list 2 duplexes in Northwest Portland. The duplexes were, 120-year-old duplexes, but they'd been restored to very high-end condition. The broker that had the listing originally struggled because, well, one, she actually right before potentially having the opportunity, she broke her leg, but she, like a lot of stuff you'll see in multifamily, a lot of residential brokers get the opportunity to list a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and they're not residential transactions anymore, especially with all the new rules and regulations facing Portland landlords, Portland tenants. Throw on top of that a pandemic, throw on top of that aging properties, and as I said before, chaos in downtown where lenders are questioning whether or not they want to lend in a market like Portland, Oregon. And then the most beautiful part of the transaction is the buyers came to me direct. So the opportunity to handle 220-year-old duplexes in Northwest Portland, both listed right at $900,000 a piece, and deal with all of the tenant-related issues, inspection-related issues, lending-related issues, trying to help lenders understand that the market is still very strong, the conditions were still very favorable. It was quite a process. I'll happy to answer some questions afterwards if you'd like, but really from the beginning, the importance of communication with tenants, the importance if you're going to take on transactions like this, really understanding landlord-tenant laws, really understanding as we've all taken a crash course, the nuances of COVID-related transaction where I literally had 4 tenants working from home. And so orchestrating inspections, orchestrating repairs, orchestrating, in the case of 120-year-old properties, a lot of intrusive inspections, foundations, things like that. It really takes kind of a management process that so I've learned after kind of migrating to this kind of organically is very different and really can be almost as big a liability as opportunity. So when Nicole asked me, we were discussing another listing opportunity that I have on 2 very similar properties, and I asked Nicole to reach out to the current owner who was self-managing and brought up a lot of the importance to that owner before we took on a listing opportunity, but even deeper, the liabilities that she was already faced with by self-managing a property. it's become much more prevalent to me as a broker and as somebody who does a lot of residential, a little bit of commercial, but more and more multifamily. The importance of not getting in over your head. As I said, these types of transactions, especially when they're higher dollar transactions from a residential side, so you're excited about them, but they also have so many little nuances. And then on top of that, by managing both sides, both buyers and sellers, you really find you have to be very careful. And with that said, without doing, there's all kinds of fun stuff I can talk about with dealing with that type of property, but I wanted to say a couple things about what I see this Portland market as we come out of an election, as we've heard a lot of interesting economic information regarding, what should we expect going forward in 2021, 2022. And, I do believe that we will continue to see this market as a real value. I run into Portlanders all the time that say, oh my gosh, it's too expensive. There's no return. It's not a great market for this type of business. Investors coming to this market. And what I'll say is, to Oregonians, it's not, because we remember a short time ago when things were so cheap. But to somebody anywhere from San Diego to Seattle, this market is still a real bargain. It still has a lot of very favorable components to it, especially from an investment quality standpoint. There are certain types of properties in Portland on the multifamily side that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. A lot of the newer, higher end stuff, I think they're the ones suffering probably the most from COVID, from what I'm reading, and non-payment of rent. But this market has a lot of property that is very conducive to a renter in the $750 to $1,750 range, and those properties will always be rented. So think outside of Portland when you're marketing these types of properties. And I would say that with a lot of other types of properties in Oregon. We've seen vacation homes just absolutely blowing up. There's no inventory. We're all COVID crazy, so we want to get out of town. That makes a lot of sense. But I would say definitely don't take doom and gloom as your message of what Portland is. It's just a changing market, and change is another way of spelling opportunity. So that's kind of what I have at this point. If you have any questions about any nuances of 2 to 5 unit type transactions, happy to answer them either directly or, of course, at this time. And I know you have an agenda, so feel free.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing that. I have one question for you real quick. What do you think the bigger obstacle was? The landlord-tenant relationship obstacles, or the inspection durability of the property being 120 years old apiece?
Well, I was fortunate in that they were high-end units. So, these people are renting for $3,000 a month. So I had a much more sophisticated tenant that, didn't just, bury their head and be locked out. The seller, even though they were out-of-state sellers, Los Angeles and Colorado, it was 2 duplexes side by side that they owned jointly. The sellers were great, but that was a little amplified by the fact that they weren't here to show things. So FaceTime became pretty valuable, especially during inspections. There was the importance of, as it relates to both the tenants and the property age issues, the documentation became probably twice the issue that it would have been had one or the other of those components, you know, kind of been local, or maybe it was a little bit newer property for sure. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you for sharing and joining us this evening. Now Cyndi can bless us with her presentation this evening and let us all know how we can start flipping real estate. So Cyndi, you are on. You can have the floor.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. I really love talking real estate, so the opportunity to talk about it with other like-minded folks is always something that I look forward to. So WIN is obviously a great group. The only thing that could be better is if we were at the Lucky Labrador, all enjoying a nice glass of wine together and being able to chat with one another and listen to one another's experiences. I have learned so much just talking to other folks, just like we're doing tonight, about the deals that they've done and how they've been able to work out things in their transactions. So tonight, I'm just going to share with you my story on flipping properties and what has worked really well for me. As I look out at the gallery, there are plenty of seasoned investors out there. And there are folks that are just getting started in the game as well. So my goal tonight is that no matter how many flips you've done, or if you're, again, just starting out, that you'll come away with something that's practical and tangible. And if you're a real estate agent, I think this will be a especially great time for us to dialogue together, because setting your clients up with realistic expectations, if this is something they're interested in, and getting them the information up front will just really increase your relationship with them and their satisfaction. And if they do a great job and love it as much as I do, they'll be back. So I think there's a lot to be talked about tonight and a lot to be learned. So feel free to chat questions to me or raise a hand. I've got someone watching that for me tonight, so we'll try to get those through. I'll probably just work through the presentation first and then catch the questions at the end. So if I don't respond to your question right away, I'm not ignoring you. We will get to that and we'll wrap up with questions. So, all right. Oops. I am going to go into screen share. Let me get this going. If you could, I would love for you to be able to talk amongst yourselves, but I guess we don't do that.
One other thing, if you guys have any questions, like Cyndi said, we have people watching the Q&A box, so feel free to type them in there, and then we'll make sure that they get answered. So Q&A box will be your friend if you have any questions.
It's not showing.
I'm just going to
Yep. Okay. And I'm just showing the desktop. I'm clicking on it. It's not showing. Yep. Do I have permissions? I'm hitting screen share. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not able to share my screen.
Terry, is that something that you have to give her permission for?
I already have permission.
He has permission.
You want to send it to me and I can share it?
Sure.
My email is trent@uptownpm.com.
We love technology.
I know this. I rehearsed this. Let me see if there's.
It's great when it works.
I know. Okay, Trent, let me give you this. Did you see anything? I'm going to chat with my assistant right here, just see if she sees anything that I don't see.
I think the bottle of wine behind you might need to be opened.
Did you send it to Trent?
I think that was great. I'm grabbing it right now. I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just thinking you could send it to me. Trent, you're able to share because you did already, so we're good. It should, I've allowed everybody to share that's on the panel. So
Yeah, and I logged in through that. So
yeah, I don't know why.
okay. Well, I guess this is a great example of just what happens in a flip when you walk in and you think the plumbing's fine until you rip into the wall and you find out it's not. So being able to pivot is a great thing. We're pivoting right now. It's kind of a large presentation, so I'm just downloading it right now.
Okay. That's a great segue too, Cyndi. You're right about that.
Yes.
There's always something. There are always challenges, and we have so many realtors on here that I know have faced the same situations in their lifetime too. So I know that they're waiting patiently.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm going to send this to you, Nicole, and then to Trent.
Well, since we have a couple minutes, a fun fact that I obtained today, going off of what Peter was talking about with the Portland market being affordable compared to some of the other West Coast markets. If you know what the 1% rule is when you're kind of quickly looking at deals, I asked a guy from Long Beach what, their typical average cap rates are, and the 1% rule is down there. And he was saying that a good deal in his area has a cap rate of between 3.8 and 4%, which is below, I would say, our average here in the Portland market. So maybe we are turning into a little bit higher priced market. Food for thought.
Hey, while we're waiting to Trent, Nicole in the Q&A is asked about which lenders were easy to work with regarding the 2 investment properties that Peter mentioned. Do you have do you know of any good lenders?
Yeah, I would say that if you've never worked with First Republic before, they tend to be fairly conservative, and you have to have money in their bank, but they're untouchable as far as process and as far as quality of product, and their rates are, like I said, you can't even touch them anywhere else, but you do need to have money in the bank. This one was actually done by Columbia Community Credit Union, and the buyer had a great reputation, reputation with them, and kind of a respectable relationship. And so from that standpoint, they made it pretty easy for her. Appraisals on stuff like this have not been an issue at all. Some of the other lenders that I've really liked on multifamily, 2 to 4, most of your conventional houses, I like to keep it as local as possible, but most of those folks have great conforming products. You go 5 and above, places like First Republic, just make it too easy. I tend to, did I lose you? No.
Oh, here we go.
I tend to steer away from the larger banks because they're either in the market or they're not. And so, the Chases, the Welleses of the world, they can be easy or they can be horrible. but yeah, I'd highly recommend First Republic. Columbia Bank also has been pretty aggressive on stuff like that. So, and then there's a couple brokers that we use that are well in tuned as money ebbs and flows in and out of this market, so they know who's hungrier than others. So, but yeah, happy to share any of that information.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Peter, very much for helping me out there. We are good to go. And thanks so much for being patient. Okay, so tonight's topic is your flip worth it? This is a huge question because it's always exciting to find that house. That's the fun part. But then going through and really making sure that that your flip is going to be worth it. So, okay, it's not letting me advance the slide. I'm so... Maybe we should have Nicole load that up, or Trent, because it's not letting me advance
Okay.
on my screen. If we go here. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. My keyboard wasn't doing it. So my story is, I'm Cyndi, and I own Evergreen Property Management, and I have owned Evergreen for about 12 years. And let me tell you, I like property management a lot more than presenting in technology right now. Normally, I really enjoy technology, but this was a rough start. So I appreciate you hanging in there with me. Evergreen's been around, like I said, since 2012. When we started the business, I started with my 2 doors and grew the company now to the 250 doors that we have now. We specialize in single family homes and small plexes. So let's get on here. And I'd like to introduce you to the Evergreen team. So these are our team of staffers that work here at Evergreen. We are just so thankful to have everybody here on our team working together for our owners. Our owners are just great. Our owners are so awesome that actually one of our owners now works for us. So that is really great that a number of folks on our staff are owners and have that perspective as well. And then of course our vendors and residents. So thankful just to be able to working with great people in the industry. So, you know how I got into real estate? This is how I got into construction. So we started renovating and flipping houses. And I learned it by doing it. That's the best way to do it. And I learned it with my family all around me. And that little child is now graduated from college and is up and on her way in life. So she survived through flipping, and we did indulge in child labor many times. So they all learned how to do it as well. And it has been a good experience for us financially and just as a family working together. So let's start at the very beginning with what is a flip and how is that different from, say, a renovation. So a flip is a property that is purchased for sale for profit. So house flipping is when a real estate investor buys houses, sells them for a profit. But in order for the house to be really considered a flip, it must be bought with the intention of quickly reselling. So the time between the purchase of the sale and is going to be a couple months, no more than a year. So that's important to keep in mind as you're moving forward and as you're scheduling things and making this happen. So. I'm sorry, my slides are not coordinated. I've got one going over here and the other one over here. So when you're flipping properties, we're not holding them for very long. So generally speaking, in the Portland area, values have gone up about 6.7% over the past year. And the latest forecast is that they'll rise about 7.3% in this next year. There have been times in the real estate market when I've invested that appreciation has been a big help in flipping properties, but that's not really what we're seeing now. So obviously, we're going to need to look for not just market appreciation, but value, a value add property that you can create that value in relatively quickly, which leads us to the 70% rule. Okay. So the 70% rule, simply put, is a way that helps house flippers determine the maximum price they can fix and flip a property for in order to turn a profit. The rules state that a fix and flip investor should pay 70% of the after repair value, or the ARV, of a property, minus the cost of property repairs and improvements. So let's take a look at that in a formula. So if the after repair value of a house is $350,000 and the cost in repairs and improvements are say $35,000, then you know that the maximum allowable offer, or the MOA, on that property for you would be $210,000. And I put down here a link to a website that you can utilize to use that calculator on a property. So there's a lot more to that. Obviously, there's information that you have to know and drill down on, and we're going to talk about that later on in the presentation. But you need to know quickly what the cost of the repairs and the improvements are going to be, because generally it's a pretty competitive market trying to find that flip property, right? We were just talking about how the inventory is super low. You are already in a great spot in that you're at win, and that's a great place to be with other investors to find those properties, because they are challenging, because you have to find just the right property. You know, you're into flipping and you're an investor when you roll up in a neighborhood to absolutely the worst property in the neighborhood and you say, that's it, that's the house I'm buying. Because that's where you're going to get that value add. That's where I have found my best deals and have received the best profit at the end. So, but again, you're going to have to go in there and look at what type of things are actually going to increase the value of the property. Today, we're just talking about really keeping track of the data and the process and how to work through that. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so we've talked so far about a property flip, and we know the flip is different than a renovation. A flip is a property that you buy with the purpose of selling it for a profit, and you're going to do that quickly. Profitability, we've determined what profitability is going to be. We're looking at that 70% rule that will help us determine the purchase price of the property, what we're going to put it in, and what our after repair value is going to be. So we can plug those numbers in. And then the next thing we need to look at is the process. So these are big steps that we've kind of went through quickly because I'm talking about data and the analysis and the numbers, but knowing what a flip is, finding that right property, making the right offer, getting your numbers to be right are super important steps for a successful flip. If these areas are off, your end result won't be what you want it to be. So let's talk about the process. The first step you're going to look at is researching the real estate market, because when these deals come along, you're going to need to move really fast. You're going to need to know, is this a good location? Is this something that has value? Is this a property that I'm skilled in that I can renovate? Does this work for me? And know how fast the market is moving and how fast you're going to need to move. So also, you want to go into this with a defined budget, what your profit goals are, how much money do you need to make? We talked about the 70% rule, which is a great standard, but a lot of investors will tweak that based on their personal preference, their needs, or their hunger to be in the game. And you'll also want to think through your risk tolerance. What if you get in there and some of your budget numbers are off? What if there are additional repairs that you didn't anticipate? What is that reality going to look like? Do you have funds available? How's that going to work for you? So you definitely want to have thought through all of these things in advance. That's the benefit of a flip analysis, is that you are drilled down on the process, you're drilled down on the numbers, and you're considering all of these steps before you even get in, and you're ready to go. Once that deal closes and that property is yours, you know your plan and you're ready to move quickly. Okay, so line up your financing before you need it. This is super important, obviously, in any deal, but knowing your budget will help you understand how much money you're going to need for repairs and how you're going to do that. Is it a HELOC on a property that you're pulling money out? Are you working with a hard money lender? Do you have a mortgage, or are you borrowing money from family or something like that? You need to know what are the terms for that, how quickly you can get it, and what that transaction is going to look like before you even go forward. Obviously, cash deals are the best for flips. If you can come in real strong, I usually go in and do a no repair offer, take it as is, and a real strong cash offer will usually get you that property. So if there's a way for you to be able to work with someone that can help you with that and get you to that spot, that's an ideal spot to be in as an investor. A lot of folks will use flips to help build up and generate the revenue needed for that. So you've probably heard people will flip 3 properties and keep the money, the profits from those deals to build up enough money to maybe keep the 4th property, or building up the revenue that they need to be able to make really competitive offers on homes and make that happen. So again, knowing your goals, what your profit's going to be and what you're going to do with it is really important. 4, start networking with contractors. You want to be able to, as you're going through the house and looking at the plumbing or looking at the electrical, whatever you might find, you want to be able to get on the phone right away if you don't know how much it's going to cost to rewire the breaker box, or if you find a roof is just at the end of life and you're going to need to replace that roof. You want to know a good, reliable roofing contractor that you know and trust, that you can say, hey, I need an estimate on that right away, because numbers are super important. You don't want to guess. You want to know before you even make that offer what your budget looks like and what your profit margins are anticipated to be, so that you know before you even take that on, yes, this is worth my time, this is worth the risk, we're going to move forward. So having those contacts will make it much easier for you to line up vendors and to know what your anticipated costs will be. So again, great reason to come to win. All right. Okay, 5, here's the key. This is really the fun part, isn't it? Finding that flip-worthy property, finding something that's just that diamond in the rough that you know that you can get in there within a reasonable scope of time and a financially responsible range, get that property looking great. I think flipping is exciting because not only are you improving the community and a neighborhood, but you are creating a great home for someone to move into and love. And that's just really rewarding to know that someone is enjoying a house that you worked on, and they're just living there, enjoying all of the good work and the upgraded systems. So, and then 6, buy the property. And there are lots of ways to do that, but clearly you're in touch with a great real estate agency with Uptown Properties. And there are great agents there to help walk you through this process. And I think that's really important. I use an agent when I buy properties. It's just the way to go. So, all right. 7, then it's the renovate. So it's demo day. Get in there. You've already got your plans because you've done your homework in advance. You've researched the real estate market, so you know the after repair value that you're shooting for that will work in that area. You've defined your budgets. You know how much money you want to make, so you've got the numbers ready to go. You've lined up financing. You know you've got money. You've networked with contractors. You know just who you're going to call. You've found the flip-worthy property because you've ran the numbers. You buy it, renovate it, and then you sell it. Selling it is the fun part. And then, of course, you repeat. Once you've got your process down, this is a repeatable process that you can do over and over again. I do want to speak to the sale part. You will want to be very careful to follow code and to use great contractors because your property is going to be inspected by the buyers, the bank inspectors, whoever's going to be inspecting it. Everybody's going to come in there and take a look at that, the appraiser. And if you have done something not to code, or maybe you chose to do something that you should have hired a contractor for, that's going to come back and bite you, and you're going to find out about that in the process. So when you're creating your budget, it is so tempting to say, oh, I'll just do that myself. Oh, sweat equity, I'm going to make some money on this deal, and maybe try to cut those corners to make a little extra cash. I really really strongly encourage you, from my experience, to always use a licensed contractor when you need one. I mean, obviously, if you're an HVAC guy and that's what you do for a career, you bet, take care of the HVAC. But if you're a dentist, you probably shouldn't be rewiring the electrical on your home. I'm just saying. You want to look at that. That's really, you think you're going to make money, but in the end, that's really not the best way. Okay. So this is where we're at so far. We have the property flip, a property purchase to sell quickly and profit. We understand profitability, 70% rule. We walked through the 8 steps, the process necessary for success. And now we're going to talk about some of the details. We're going to pin the details down. Full disclosure, there are so many ways to do a flip. Everybody has their own system, what they like to do and how they like to do it. So I encourage you to talk to lots of people about this and get lots of information. This is how it works for me, and I love it. So I'm going to share that with you. So in creating, let's go back to that. In creating your budget, this is the information you're going to need to track down. You want to have the purchase price and whatever you're putting down for the down payment. And you just, obviously you're going to get the down payment back when you sell, but you want to know how much financing you're going to need up front. So track all of those costs. You want to track any of the purchase transaction costs on your disclosure, you know, your real estate, your appraisal, your whatever, those fees add up, and that's part of the process. And so you need to track all that. You need to know what your sales transaction costs are going to be and track those. Keep those title company sheets and the disclosure sheets. Building and repair materials. You're going to want to kind of keep tabs on how much things are costing. I went to Home Depot over the weekend and was absolutely floored at how empty the shelves were and how expensive materials have gotten. So make sure that you have accurate pricing on your materials and your estimates and what you think that that's going to cost. Vendors, know your vendors, know how much your plumber charges an hour. Is it $165 an hour? Know how much your electrician charges an hour. Kind of have that information at the ready so that you can create that budget. Because remember, we're really creating the budget before we even find the property. We're getting these numbers of what we're anticipating in general, and then we'll drill it down when we have the actual property. Utility costs, you're going to be paying utilities during the flip. So make sure that, you know, you're transitioning all the utilities over, you've got those in your name and you are ready to pay the utility. Loan payments, make sure that you have enough money saved in the transaction to be making those loan payments throughout the time. See why the quick comes in? You want to do this as quickly as possible so that these incidental costs of utilities and loan payments and property tax, and you better have the property insured. So you're going to want to have insurance on your property, and you're going to be paying for that as well. So the quicker you move, the less the incidental expenses are for you. Also, something to think about, some investors think about this, some don't. Some say it's just part of the game. Increased personal cost. If you have little kids and you're going to need increased daycare costs, or you're eating out a ton, or maybe you're working a little bit less, you're not taking as many real estate transactions because you're putting your time in on this flip. What's the personal cost? Make sure that you know what that is. If you don't want to put it in the formula, that's fine. But we're talking about making money. So we're going to track all the data, all the numbers, and at least know what's the personal cost. Okay. So when you're tracking the personal costs, I'm going to go back here. When you're tracking these expenses, your goal is going to be, you've purchased the home and you're ready to go. You are going to track every penny in and every penny out. To people like me who love data and numbers, that just sounds awesome. I realize that I have just described a special kind of hell to some of you who really hate the numbers. And don't worry, when we get to the end, you can hire out the more complicated accounting. But this part you really do have to do as the investor, because that's going to be on you. You're going to track every penny spent on that property, every penny in, every penny out. So I recommend that you use a dedicated credit card for all expenses. When my kids were younger, we used a Disney Visa. We went to Disneyland with a boatload of Disney dollars. So some people like those kind of credit cards, some people don't. But a dedicated credit card for all expenses. You can pay your mortgage, your utilities, a lot of vendors, material costs with that credit card. And that makes it super easy for you to track if it's all on that. So then you're going to want to dedicate one spot, and usually we'll dedicate one spot actually on site at the property, because when you're running out to Home Depot, you're running out from the property back to the property. If you have a box at home or someplace else, you're going to have to transfer that data. So if you just have one dedicated spot actually on site to drop all those receipts in, it will make it so easy. The warranties, the materials, the specs, any paint color chips, anything that has to do with that project. Just dump it all in one spot, and we'll be doing something with that at the end. So hold on to that thought. And then I recommend having a dedicated business checking account for the flip. Makes your accounting a breeze. It's easy to get just an extra checking account. And then you can just use that, print that check register at the end of the flip, and anything that came out of your checking account, any funds that you deposited in, to start the account will be there. And then the credit card expenses is your other tracking, and the credit card payment will be in there. It is sweet. It is a really easy way to track all the money. And then keep, of course, all the purchase and sale disclosure forms from the title company. That will tell you all of the fees that you're paying in there. And again, you want to have a complete and total view of all the funds that went into that flip at the end. So. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And this is the part where either you love data and you think this is really fun, or you hate it. And I have to say that collecting the data and doing the work is really fun. Putting in this little spreadsheet form, not my thing. I really don't enjoy it. And I have to give all the credit to Christine, who's the director of finance for Evergreen. I hand her all the receipts in order, and I make them all neat. And she takes it and puts it in the Google spreadsheet for me. And it is great, because at the end of the flip, I've got the check register, the credit card statements, receipts, invoices from all the vendors. It's all together. And she tops it off with the Google Sheets. And then my accounting is all ready to go to my CPA. All of the expenses and the profit, everything is right there. So that's always a bummer when you flip a property and you go to your taxes at the end of the year, and then you're like, oh, I've got to get all this data, and you have to go back and find it all. Not good. So if you just keep track of it, not only will you know how your investment performed and the dollars and cents of your deal, but your tax prep is also already done. Another added bonus, and something that we do for the homes that we flip, we create a 3-ring binder that we set out when the home is being shown. And in that binder, we will include, if there's a new garage door, we include the invoice from the garage door installer, specs on the new garage door, the flyer that comes with it. If we install new flooring, we'll install a little information sheet on the flooring, the type of flooring, the color that it, and any information, the warranties, if it's a lifetime, waterproof floor, whatever it might be. If we installed a new countertop or specific paint colors, we'll just put the paint chips. And basically this homeowner now that's thinking about buying your home is looking through this binder, which really wasn't all that hard for you to put together because you've just put all the information in one place. And they're seeing vendor invoices for repairs, the new water heater, or whatever that you've done. If you had the furnace inspected and tuned up, or all of these, they can see all of the work that's gone into the house, and they can see the special touches, the colors of the flooring, the colors of the paint. And that really is something that we have found helps sell a house really quick. When they see that you've been thoughtful, you've done a great job on your flip, and that they're getting a house that has been well cared for and is uniquely and custom designed. It really helps in that process. So I think that is a huge win for them. Okay, so the other, the bonus of doing all of this work, I also think that you should always do an efficiency check. So we're going to run the numbers, and every penny in, every penny out is what we've talked about. We're going to know, was our investment profitable? But there's that, unknown quantity, non-invoiced work hours by you and by others. Have you ever wondered, if you've done a flip, I know you've wondered, I wonder what my hourly rate was for this, especially if you put in a lot of sweat equity. I remember hearing that when I first started renovating properties way back, thinking, what in the world is this magical number, sweat equity? Somehow it makes you money, but I'm doing a whole lot of work. And so at one point I decided I am not doing any more sweat equity until I run the numbers. I want to know for sure, is this sweat equity actually making me more money? Because there's a really fine line. If you're experiencing a longer flip and you're paying more mortgage payments, more insurance, more utilities, and it's taking you more time and it's longer for you to get this done, then you really have to look at that sweat equity piece. What you are doing, could have a contractor done it more quickly? Could have they done it more efficiently? And maybe those dollars of paying someone to do something you could do really aren't that far apart. So when you're at the end, this is the great time to do that in that efficiency check. If you've tracked your hours on site, and I know this sounds just crazy, but if you could do it on your watch or your calendar app, just something real easy, nothing crazy, just track how many hours you spent on site working at the property, or how many times, even if you're just project managing and you're hiring all of the work of that flip out, how many hours did you put into that? And just divide that by your profit. And then you'll know what your sweat equity is worth. So, and also in the efficiency check, you want to look at the process and plan any needed changes in the future. If there was something that you did, reflection is so important, because a flip is a process that you can repeat over and over again. And you want to make sure that you take that time to look at that process and say, this worked, this didn't. I was off on this number. Wow, that roofing was way more expensive than I thought it was. And take that all into consideration. And when you drill down to the data and you have all the receipts and the invoices, you've tracked every penny in, every penny out, you will be able to use all of these reports for future turns, because you know how much it costs, down to the penny, to buy new cabinets for that kitchen. You know how much it cost to reno that bathroom. The power of data and the power of understanding and knowing the decisions you're making and the actions that you're taking is huge. It's the difference between a novice investor and somebody who really wins and can make significant gains. It's a difference between a client who maybe flips once and falls flat and it was a disaster, or a client who goes, wow, my realtor found me a great property. This was a great experience. I want to do it again. And you know, they're telling all their friends about their flips, because flips is just it's a fun process. It's a fun thing to do, from total mess to a beautiful place. It's rewarding. So I think there's a lot to be said for really encouraging these steps and taking a look at them and making them work for you. So just for proof that my poor children did not suffer long-term damage, this is them all grown up. And in the upper left-hand corner is actually my dad. My dad has worked on a lot of flips with us. He went in on with us this last summer on one, and it's been a really fun experience for us as a family to work together and to flip properties and to solve problems and do all sorts of crazy things that you do when you're flipping a property. But yes, and we're even bringing another generation in. This little sweet baby there is our granddaughter, Charlotte. So we're excited to bring her up in the biz too. So what I'd like to do now is just answer any questions that may have came up during our presentation. I know there are probably things that you're thinking of. We just kind of really went on the exterior of looking at the data and how to analyze a flip, but there are so many how-to questions about how to get into a flip. What does a property look like? What if this happens? That this is just an amazing environment to toss those questions out because there's just such a wealth of knowledge for everyone here. So hopefully someone will toss out a couple questions that we can chew on.
I have a few for you that I can read off from the people here.
Great.
Let's just start from the first one. So when it comes to flips, are there any issues that are big things that we should recommend to our clients avoid? For example, foundation issues, party line sewers, fire damage. What issues have you found that should be left for full-time developers?
Yeah, that is a great question. So what I have found to be things that don't add a tremendous, they might add value to the property, but they don't add value to the price. People expect doors, people expect toilets. So you're not going to make a lot of money if, depending on the price, again, if you're just doing basic structural things, fire damage versus something that's like, my favorite flip is a 1970s ranch home. They just have solid bones. They're easy to renovate. You usually don't run into a lot of hazardous substances, and you can end up with a great flip. So basically, my answer to that is, yeah, I do. Personally, for me, I stay away from the really big fire damaged, big structural issues, but it's all about the numbers, right? So if I got the house for a price that I could hire my contractors, correct those deficits and make a profit, sure, I'm going to do it if I have those contacts. So it's a data-driven decision. It's all about the numbers and about the risk tolerance and the abilities of the investor.
Couldn't agree with you more. When you were talking about the 70% rule towards the beginning of the presentation, when you said repair and renovation costs, I want to say, do you factor the monthly fixed holding costs into that cost amount?
I would, yeah. That when I go through that budgeting, I want to know exactly how much money I'm going to need to have on hand to get that whole project done. So I will factor in, I'm going to need to pay utilities, the mortgage, whatever it is. I get a really big number. This is what I'm going to need to get me to closing.
Okay.
That's a great question.
What is your favorite and most profitable price point? Are you still focused in Portland Metro, or are you looking outside of it now?
Yeah, I'm outside Portland. I'm avoiding that. So I live out in Troutdale. So the Gresham Troutdale area works really well for me. I know the neighborhoods, I know the locations. I'm very in tune with that market. So I feel like that puts me in a better position. So I usually stick out here, and I love a good ranch. I love a good starter home. I think there's a good market for it. So usually, if you can get something for like $325, you know, that would be really great to add value to that.
Okay. This question kind of follows up with that. Is it still possible to find properties in Portland or the Portland metro area that fit that 70% rule? Because I feel like, you know, it might be kind of difficult right now.
Yeah. Well, agreed. And, you know, anybody here at WIN has uptown properties to help them with that. There are also other ways to find properties that might be a little closer to meeting that. The 70 is a general rule. You get to decide what you work for. You get to decide, yeah, this deal is worth it for me because I want the experience, I want the challenge, or, it's what's available and I need to do something. So the 70% rule, again, is a general just rule of thumb, and you can alter that based on your own experience. But auctions, foreclosures, pocket listings, there are all sorts of creative ways for people to get their hands on properties. And it does take somebody who's working hard. Every time I'm driving through a neighborhood, I'm always looking for the very worst house. And some people, find that house and we'll send them a letter. There are all sorts of creative ways that investors find that property, because that's key, right? It's all about the numbers.
Absolutely. Do you think it's more common for a flip investor to be a broker as well, so they can kind of, so have some control over the commissions that are being paid out?
For sure. That's a huge advantage. When you do your budgets and you look at that expense, that's a significant expense. So a lot of folks will go ahead and get that broker's license to be able to facilitate those flips. It depends on how many you're doing. As I know people also that work deals with brokers that are flipping properties fairly frequently, and they're able to come to an agreement on a price that they feel works for them. It is nice to, for liability purposes, not to be selling your own flips, to have a degree of separation there. I like that. I work with an agent, but again, the numbers have to really play.
Yeah. When you're looking for or trying to find the ARV of a potential flip, do you use Zillow for that, or do you have your broker that you work with run those numbers?
Well, I would ask my broker's opinion, but because my profit is hanging on that number, I'm going to do a lot of work on my own. I'm going to be watching, watching Zillow, but watching actually closed sales and asking around and getting a lot of data to make sure that my after repair value is good, right? You don't want to guess high on that. Mm-hmm. You want to be reasonably conservative so that you get a nice surprise at the end and not something sad. One flip that we did, something that I learned, it went longer than we wanted it to go, and we missed that summer opportunity. We thought we would be able to put it on the market at the beginning of August, and we ended up putting it on mid-September. And we did sustain a loss. We got a little bit less for that house as opposed to that hot summer market. It was in a neighborhood area where a lot of families are moving in, and schools was an important selling factor of that particular location. So because we didn't get it done quite as fast as we thought, we did. So ARV can fluctuate.
How long are your properties off market after purchase before relisting typically?
Yeah, I want to flip them in no more than 2 or 3 months at the most. I want it to happen fast. But in the property management industry, that's what we do. We deal with vacancies. So we're pretty good at flipping properties quickly. That's something that we do a lot.
And then I know you talked about having one credit card to really keep track of all your expenses. Do you try to pay vendors with that as well?
Yeah, anybody who will take the credit card, because it's easy accounting. It's right there, and it saves me time. So I try to put everything on the credit card. But if you've got that dedicated checking account too, you can do it either way. Just don't pay anybody in cash.
And then, do you have any hard money lenders that you work with?
I have a hard money lender that I've had discussions with. I haven't gone that route yet, but really that's a good thing to have in your pocket. I think that's something that everybody should be thoughtfully considering and working with that, because when you're dealing with flips, if you find a great property, a cash offer is going to be the best way for you to move forward. So whether it's your intent to build up that revenue for yourself, or whether you have an investor that you're working with, that makes the deal go really well.
I second that. Hard money, a good hard money lender is very valuable.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any books that you have read and want to recommend on flipping?
Well, I happen to have a couple right behind me. Yeah, either one of these would be really great. Bigger pockets. Also, I'm sure most of you are on that. That is great. The book on estimating rehab costs. It's a great book for just making sure you're well versed on what you're doing, and then buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Yes.
Okay, and then I got two more questions here. Do you, when you're looking at a flip, do you try to avoid work that requires permits, or does that not factor in?
Well, it depends on what permit it is, and sometimes little things need permits these days. So I don't necessarily, but I don't buy in the city of Portland either. I am usually buying purposely in an area that I can work well with if I do need a permit.
Mm-hmm. And then, are you holding any properties that you were flipping, or are you just flipping everything?
Nope. Right now, we just have our duplex, and we are not flipping anything currently. So we don't have anything in process.
But you will, I mean, you will hold properties if the numbers work out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay. Yeah. Again, it's all about the numbers, and I think holding is important. Flipping 3 and then holding 1 is a great way to build up your investment portfolio. Diversification in anything that you're doing is really important, but especially in real estate.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess one more question. How do you find contractors that are accessible and available to work on a pretty quick turnaround?
That is huge, because when you pick up the phone and you're trying to move fast and they're scheduling 3, 4, 5 weeks out, it's a problem. So again, it comes down to networking. It comes down to knowing folks, and you're letting them know, hey, I just put an offer in on this house. I think we're going to need a roof. Can you just kind of get me on your schedule? And starting that communication as soon as you possibly can. And if you're a repeating client to someone, a plumber, or a roofer, or electrician, and you're great to work with, you set the work site up well for them, you have a complete scope of work that's easy to understand, they can get in there, get the work done, get out, you pay them right away. Building those vendor relationships will be a tremendous asset to you. So yeah, you got to know the right people for sure.
And then, do you have any experience with Curbio? I personally have never heard of that, but have you ever heard of that?
Experience with what?
Curbio, Curbio.
No, I'm sorry, I don't, but I'll definitely look that up.
As will I. Well, I think that's the last question.
Well, Cyndi, I just had a couple questions for you. I'm just wondering because I've had some horror stories from some of my clients. So I'm just wondering, do you have a horror story? Like, what are your biggest mistakes and what are your biggest wins? Things that we need to look out for and things that we need to look forward to when we're looking at this.
Yeah, well, my biggest loss was in 2009 when the market crashed. And so that was a property that we had bought and renovated and put a good chunk of money into, looking for appreciative value. And we just didn't see it, but we didn't lose money. We just didn't make as much as we had really wanted to out of that investment. And yeah, just having your pulse on the market and knowing that the appreciative value can change, I think, is important. But the biggest wins are just those great properties, those 1970s style homes that have great bones, that just require an aesthetic renovation, not huge structural issues. You really, you want to make sure you're going to get value out of whatever you do. And people expect a home to have a hot water heater that works. So you're not going to get as much money out of that as you would if you could just paint kitchen cabinets, add some custom tiles, and really make it look great, update it. That's where you're really going to see that return on your money, and that's fun. I like doing that too.
So do you put a home warranty on your properties, like for 1970s homes that have a furnace in there that's so old, that seems like that might be a value.
Yeah, well, it depends. A lot of times with the 1970s homes, the furnace has already been replaced. So, definitely you'll want to pay attention to that. I'm not a huge home warranty fan. But if my buyer wants one and I can toss that in as a value add to seal the deal, you betcha. We're going to do a home warranty. So whatever it takes to sell it quickly at the price that we want.
Okay.
When you are going through the design process, do you do that in-house or do you hire an outside design team for layout if you're moving walls and that kind of thing?
Walls. I do my own design, but I do work with a company called Lollygags that will consult. I usually have her stage properties that we're selling. Staging is one of those nice details that, again, if it works, not all properties are really worth staging, but if you are working with a property that is, yeah, we'll do that. And sometimes we'll consult with her on design elements too, but mostly I do it on my own.
Okay. Do you have, when you're holding a property, do you have a multiplier for rate of rent you use as a rule of thumb? I don't know if that means cap rate or gross rent multiplier, but do you have a certain cap rate or cash on cash return that you want to see if you are going to hold a property?
If I'm going to hold a property and rent it out, what am I going to need in rent to make that worth it for me? So I don't really have a formula because I know what I can get in rent. It's market indicated, right? And so I'll just calculate the amount of rent that I'm going to get, and if it works out with the mortgage and I have a specific reason for holding it, generally it's more about the money that I put into the property. Do I want that money to sit there? Is that its highest and best use? To sit in that property for a while and I rent it out, or do I have another project that I want to get that capital out and do it? So yes, it's always important to look at, your return. Is it going to be a good rental? Is it going to make enough money for you? That's super important. But as an investor, I think there are other things to consider too.
So if you were going to hold it and maybe you did have some capital that you wanted back out, have you ever considered refinancing and doing the cash out refi to use those funds?
Yeah, that's a great way to keep the properties rolling for sure. And especially with the appreciated value, that works really well. For sure.
I think that is Burr almost at its finest.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when would you feel that a property is worth staging? Is that only on higher price points?
Not necessarily. The staging isn't that much. I think, you can get staging between $350, $500. So it would be based on the property. If I feel like, oh, this thing is going to fly off the market, then I don't need to worry about it. But if I think, oh, this is a little bit of a quirky property, it might need a little oomph to get on the market, then I'll have it staged just to give it that extra appearance. But again, it's knowing your market and knowing the industry and what you're going to need to meet your goal.
Exactly. Let's see. We do have a question that says, when holding a property, what is considered a good cash on cash return? I don't know if you did dive too deep into that.
Yes, obviously I didn't dive deep into that. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that in context of the flip. I'm not in property management. I understand what they're asking for, but could I get a little more information on that?
I think what they're talking about is what kind of cash flow or revenue do you want to see to the cash you actually have invested in the property? So if you were going to tie up the capital in the property and hold it as a rental, let's say you put, you left 50 grand in the deal for round numbers.
Yeah.
And every year you're receiving, your cash flow and 10 grand on the property. So, your cash on cash return in that situation would be 20%. Would that be something that you would hold, or would it need to be higher, or does it need to be 20%?
20% would be fine. Again, I I think I would be, if I didn't have anything else to invest in it, then I would hold it. It's, for me personally as an investor, I understand the equation and the philosophy behind that. But for me, the decision to hold it or to move on to something else is really about the market. Is, do I have an opportunity? Is the market ready for me to take something else, or do I need to hold this one? Do I need to rest? So that's my honest answer on that one, is that I wouldn't look necessarily to just a number, but situationally to what my opportunities are.
I would say for a hold, a property that you're going to hold, if you're anywhere above, if you're around 15% cash on cash return or higher, you're making 15% on your money, which is a good return. So
yeah.
And then one more time, what was that? The title of the estimating repair costs? Is that what it's called?
The book on estimating, rehab.
Okay.
And I think these are all available. I'm sure they are, from Bigger Pockets if you go to their website in their bookstore.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'm going to just mention, Cyndi, because I know it's hard to get these, right? It's difficult. Like, you're driving by places and you're seeing something run down. So I just want to mention to those of you out there looking to do that, don't forget to call your title company, because I am happy if you want to give me a call or whoever your preferred title company is, but we can get you owner information. We can get you at our company, we can get you emails and phone numbers as well. So that makes life a little bit easier. So just let us know. We can do a little bit of research on our end for you also. Now, Cyndi, question for you. With all the foreclosures now starting to come back up, do you see an influx of all of this happening, or what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yes, I think we're going to see opportunities for sure. Sadly, when folks come around to that mortgage reality, I think there will be foreclosures and opportunities to flip and invest and buy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we need to be ready with our contractors on hand and our financing on hand, and know what that 70% rule is and be ready to go.
For sure. For sure.
Okay.
absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I think I just remembered that tomorrow is actually the 1-year anniversary of our first WIN event. So we've made it 365 calendar days almost. So thank you everyone that joined us this evening. And of course, Cyndi, for your awesome presentation, Daniel, Dylan, Peter, and then Terry for making it all happen. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening, and thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you, Cyndi.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you all. You should be receiving your credit hour on